In this lesson, we'll focus on the next step for our concept sketch and how it can be refined and polished into a finished piece. Okay, so I've got the Lesson 9 Begin file open here in front of me. If you want to open that up, you'll be able to follow along. So I believe I showed you these sketches earlier in this course. This is the concept sketches that I did for our Woody's Barbecue logo. So you can actually kind of follow my progress with these sketches. If you start up here at the top left and move left to right this direction, and then come and pick up right down here, almost like you've got two different rows you're looking at. So this was me trying to develop a mascot for this particular logo, and you can see I've experimented with several different types of characters and just kind of all over the board at first. And as we kind of move over to this part, you can see the first little beaver sketch here that I really kind of liked. So if we come down here, you'll see that I've started to really focus mostly on that type of animal for my mascot. And there's a few other ones sprinkled in, but you can see that I've pretty much settled on that. So as I've settled on that, you'll see here me starting to play with different arrangements and different types of logos for this particular identity. Now, as you begin to sort of feel like you have a solid direction through your concept sketches, then you can begin to refine those sketches. You can begin to draw and redraw if needed, and just spend more time focusing on that specific idea. So you can see my specific idea here is Woody the Beaver, and I've started playing with him in different locales around the type for this logo, and right here is pretty much the final pencil sketch that I worked from to create the logo. In this sketch you can see that I've kind of used a cutout of a wood stump as the background. I've placed Woody here above the type that says Woody, and in this case, I didn't even bother to actually sketch barbecue down below, just simply because I knew that once I got this sketch into Illustrator, I was going to be using some sort of a typeface for that. So this right here was pretty much the final pencil sketch. Now, the next step in terms of refinement, pretty much there's not going to be a black and white answer for this. There's not going to be a right or a wrong way to do it, as long as you're spending more time refining. So in this particular case, let me just kind of expand this layer out and show you. What I've done here is I took that sketch into Photoshop and I created some really clean inked line work for components here. You can see that I've done that for Woody, and I've also done that for the wood stump. Now from here, this went into Adobe Illustrator, where I proceeded to build out the final logo right here. Now this is how I handled this particular logo, but like I said before, there's really not a wrong way or a right way in terms of the steps to take for refining a concept sketch. Let me show you a little different example here, and this one will be based on a character. So in this case, let me just hide this and bring in this layer. You can see that I started this character out doing obviously measuring the number of heads tall, but if we come over here and let me bring in Sketches 1, you can see that I'm focusing on the pose of the character. This was for our female hero character that actually went through and actually is a 3D asset in our library now as well. But you can see that I focused on, if you look closely at some of these, really loose gestural drawings, and then took those a step further in refinement just so I could kind of nail each one of these poses down. I'm not focusing on details like the hands or the toes or the face or anything like that really, but mainly just on the pose itself. So this is those gesture drawings that I showed you earlier in this course taken a step further for me. So I've done several of these here. Sketches 1, Sketches 2, and Sketches 3 all contain different poses or potential poses for this character. Now, some of these poses obviously didn't make the cut, and there's a number of reasons. Some of them just didn't look quite right, some of them I wasn't quite feeling, but the final pose that I ended up with on this character was this pose right here. So you can see here that, again, not a lot of detail put into this. I did decide to put a handgun in her hand, being that she is a female hero and I wanted to create a little bit of a backstory for her. We actually have a course in our library on actually creating her from start to finish. So Let's go ahead and show you kind of the next step that I took in her development, though, was I took this particular pose sketch that I did, and I took it a little bit further. And you can see that, let me go ahead and hide that. You can see that what I've done is I painted a base flesh tone on top of her. I've also detailed out her face and the handgun here. Now, what this allowed me to do is treat her like almost like a paper doll. If you remember those as a kid growing up, I don't know if you've ever experienced those, but I know that I remember seeing those as a child. That allowed me to basically pick and choose the attire that she was wearing, and there was a number of different wardrobe options that I experimented with, but with this particular character, this was sort of the final image that we went with. So she's you can see here that she's got pants and a kind of a utility belt, and then kind of this strange vest-like structure with an undershirt underneath it. So this is the process of refinement that I went through on this female hero character, taking her from simple concept sketches all the way to a finished piece of concept art that I could go ahead and hand off to, in this case, Justin, our lead modeling instructor, so he could begin sculpting her in a sculpting package. I believe he'd used ZBrush. Alright, great. So if you're actually interested in checking those courses out, the course that I took this particular character from simple concept sketch all the way to finished piece of concept art was titled Capturing the Essence of a Character in Photoshop. Check it out in our library if you're interested. Now, if you're interested in learning how to actually model this particular character, Justin did a course called Modeling a Female Hero in ZBrush and Maya that you might check out as well. So in this lesson, we have taken a look at sort of what the next step is for our concept sketches and how those concept sketches can evolve into a finished piece. So now to wrap this course up, let's go ahead and move on to the next lesson, and we'll learn about some habits of successful sketchers.